Erev Tov, everyone. Excuse me. That wasn't a good way to start by coughing. In any case, we are discussing, continuing to discuss the relationships between Orthodox and non-Orthodox movements. And I think I mentioned in the past, I don't know if I shared it with anyone. I have to thank Rav Eitan ben David for sharing this with me. But Rav Eitan, but you know, I did tell you all that a few months ago. There was an evening about Rav Heschel, and it was put together by the conservative community, Amitai, and the Moitza Datit publicized it. And then there was a discussion and an argument among some of the rabbis, the Orthodox rabbis in Ra'anana, about cooperation with conservative. And I was pleasantly surprised that there were a few of the local rabbis who were supporting the decision of the religious council to allow space for them as well, and to say we disagree and we don't justify all kinds of halachic things that are done wrong halachically, but for some people, that's what gives them their Jewish identity and so on. And in any case, Eitan sent out there an article that I am not familiar with, because I'm not very familiar with articles in English. And there was an article by Rav Lichtenstein, who I appreciate very much and I learned from and was in touch with. And now I asked Rav Eitan, I didn't keep track of the article, and I asked Rav Eitan to send it to me. And I looked for it independently on the internet, and I found it on the site, lo and behold, of Yeshivat Har Etzion. And I'd like to quote something from the article. I'll show you a little bit of the article. Let's see. Here it is. No, I don't want it that way. Let's see. That's Hebrew. 1 second. I'm sorry.
Upper right.
That has it, but I want it in a different form. If I don't find the other one, I'll go back to that one. Let's see. Should be right here. How do I? Okay, this I should be able to share. There it is. Okay. So this is the headline of the article. The site is the site of Yeshivat Har Etzion. Everyone sees it? Yes? I'm sharing the screen, yes? People see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yes.
this is Rav Aaron Lichtenstein. This is the title of the article. It's in a journal. I think it's in the Orthodox Forum journal. I'm not sure. In any case, the title of the article is Beyond the Pale, ? Reflections regarding contemporary relations with non-Orthodox Jews. I had to figure out what Beyond the Pale means, but that was pretty easy with Google around in the world. And so now I learned a new expression, Beyond the Pale. And if I understand correctly, what he means in the headline is that it's non-Orthodox movements, non-Orthodox, Jewish regulations are not acceptable for an Orthodox person. Let's be honest. Let's be straightforward. But at the same time, what does that say about the relations between the different people? Was this published in 2021? I'm surprised if it was. No, it cannot be 2021, because Rav Lichtenstein passed away 9 years ago, just a few days before Osho's father passed away. I don't know why that's the date. Zatzal, yes. So they put it. I guess what they did is they took it from the origin and put it on their site in 21. I guess that's what it means. In any case, I haven't read the whole thing. I've read part of it, but I want to quote one specific part, which I think is very valuable, and it includes a lesson for all of us to learn that is relevant in many, many, many aspects of our lives, including very practical. And here it is. Okay, so you see the page that I've put on the screen.
Is it
Before we-
possible to get a copy of this before you go into this piece?
You want me to send you the link?
Yeah,
Send you the link on WhatsApp?
that's great. I would appreciate it.
Yeah, but I don't think we have a group of this. So you want it right now to follow it on your phone or on your computer?
No. I would like to be able
After
to
the
read-
shiur.
Yeah, thank you.
After the shiur, Ilana, please remind me. Anyone else who wants it, I will be happy to send it to you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so he says the following. Before we choose a course of action, we must effect a change of mindset and a change of heart. We must, at the very least, reduce the level and the scope of mutual demonization. So long as communal leaders are viewed respectively as nothing but power-hungry iconoclasts. Help me with that one. What does it mean?
Iconoclasts, crazy people.
Okay.
People who treat themselves as icons.
Okay. Or as benighted obscurantists.
More crazy.
Okay. We shall collectively pay a heavy price. Unless and until we develop a propensity. Oh, his English is too good for propensity.
Tolerance, don't
Nitya.
develop
Propensity
mutual
is
respect.
nitya.
Okay.
Develop mutual respect.
Okay, for mutual respect. Acknowledging that there may be mediocrities and charlatans in various camps, but steadfastly refusing to tar indiscriminately both the interests of Klal Yisrael and the integrity of Rebbe Yisrael will be adversely affected, meaning the interests of Klal Yisrael will be affected, meaning that we also have what we should be interested in is what's best for Klal Yisrael. Klal is the general Am Yisrael, meaning what we should be seeking is what's better for Am Yisrael. And if that includes arguing with positions, with organizations, with groups that we disagree with for the better, for the best, what's best for Klal Yisrael, that is fine. But one of our interests for the best of Klal Yisrael is also that as you were saying before, that we should have some kind of level of mutual respect and togetherness. You want to affect Am Yisrael, but you want Am Yisrael to stay together. So you can argue and you can be critical, and you can criticize and disagree and not always cooperate with something that someone else is doing. And you can claim that some of the leaders there are just busy with mediocrities and are charlatans and so on. But you also have to argue respectfully with the positions that you're arguing with, and you have to put in place some actions that keep us together. And also, if we don't do that, we are also causing damage, affecting the integrity of Rebbe Yisrael. Rebbe Yisrael means each one of us. It's important that we remain people who are respectful of others, even when we're disagreeing with them. Unquestionably, where the most basic elements of our religious faith and existence are at stake, the totality of our relation to Torah, or critical aspects of that relation regarding the content of Emunot v'deot, of beliefs and religious opinions, meaning Torah min hashamayim, Torah is God-given, some things can't be changed, all kinds of things that we, the communal we, or Orthodox believe in. So this is what at stake. Character of halakha, the substance of Tanakh, and the contours of our commitment as of Dei Hashem, people who worship Hashem, not just keep a certain law of religion, confronted by heterodox denominations, passions naturally and justifiably run high. It's not only natural that passions run high, it's even justifiable that passions run high.
You're a baby.
History has amply demonstrated that internecine religious strife is often the most bitter, as combatants are animated by a sense of engagement in the encounter of the children of light with the children of darkness. So it becomes very bitter and becomes very passionate. For us, however, as Jews committed to the entirety of Torah, let vitriolic, I get that right? Vitriolic antagonism not prevail. Without understanding the word, I get the idea. Let vitriolic antagonism not prevail routinely and consistently as the sole or even as the dominant passion. Let us therefore be intent upon monitoring our motivation with an eye to ensuring that if indeed we have been charged to enter the lists of fraternal strife, literal or figurative, we do so impelled by devotion and responsibility, but animated by the hope and the prospect of binding reconciliation. So I'm not sure. One of the things, and one of the main reasons that I appreciate Rav Lichtenstein very much is because of his ability to see the two sides of an issue and to point them out and to write them very articulately and show this side and that side, and not to cover up or to hide or diminish one side because of the other side, but to state them both strongly. On the one hand, we are talking about the basics of Torah, basic things of Torah. So of course the argument is very passionate, and it's justifiably passionate. At the same time, we want to be committed to the entirety of Torah. Being committed to the entirety of Torah means, on the one hand, to be committed to keeping halakha, to beliefs that Am Yisrael has, to all kinds of things like that, and not making changes that we disagree with. But the entirety of Torah also includes the reconciliation and the togetherness of Am Yisrael. That is also part of the entirety of Torah. So while we will passionately argue, we will also passionately make sure that we do something to keep ourselves together, even when we are arguing. So this is as far as I've reached in the article. But of all the things I've read in the pages until now, as you see, about two words in every sentence I don't understand, but I get the idea. But by the way, his doctorate was in English literature. But so it's no coincidence that he uses this amazing English. But when I came to this paragraph, I said, this is something I want to quote and something I want to say. It's true about arguments between Orthodox and non-Orthodox, and I have to say it's true in the world. It's true in Israel today. We have to make sure that as we argue passionately about the things that are going on in Israel today, we have as much passion for keeping Am Yisrael together. We have to do both. And it's legitimate to passionately have our arguments about what should be done in the state of Israel, but if they are done with absolute venom and hatred and anger and aggressiveness, and not putting in place also compassion and being passionate about being the togetherness of Am Yisrael, then something is wrong here. And what we have to look for within ourselves is what is driving us. I just saw something in Ra'anana now. There is a very passionate argument happening now that not everyone is aware of within the local politics between the different parties, non-religious, religious. And I've been speaking to a few rabbis because I want to try and effect that the arguments will be passionate but respectful. And I just happened to bump into something that a rabbi wrote, not from Ra'anana, a very well considered rabbi who writes halachic answers, and is not from my camp, so to speak. He is not as open as my camp, put it that way. Yet when it comes to these issues of arguments between religious and non-religious, he writes there about the importance of carrying out the argument in a constructive way, of asking ourselves, what is driving me? Is it just my personality? I get angry about things and things like that. And how much is it about the issue? How do I give the message that it's something I care about very much, and at the same time, not turn away other people? So this is something, he brought sources for this about Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi was very zealous and was actually taken down from his prophetic position by Hashem in the book of Kings, in Melachim, and someone else, Elisha, was appointed instead of him. And there are several sources about this in the rabbinic literature. And he quotes from there something about, if you're too zealous, you're going to cause damage and not something that's going to be constructive. So I sent this to one of the rabbis I was talking to, actually to a few of the rabbis I was talking to, and I think it's important. And I want to take this also to the places where we are at. If you're demonstrating, whatever demonstration it is, the one that I agree with or the one that I disagree with, or I see the point in all the different demonstrations, I'm saying this clearly. First of all, within your group, within your, what's the word in Hebrew? It's called milieu. Milieu.
Milieu.
In Hebrew, it's called milieu.
Milieu.
I know. I'm just saying Hebrew.
He's joking. He knows it's French.
I'm pronouncing it in proper Hebrew. Milieu. Milieu. I got it. But within your milieu, you have to bring the energy to there of how do we, at the same time that we are demonstrating, how do we bring out the energy of how important it is to remain one people? You have to speak up against people from your camp who are speaking too antagonistically, too violent, too aggressive, too disrespectful, and so on. And you have to try and give energies both for this and for that. Come to the unity demonstrations on Motzei Shabbat or whatever, but it's important for all of us that we do not tear our people, our nation, our country apart in the name of what we believe is right. So you need to give energies to both of those sides. And this is what Rabbi Lichtenstein is saying about the Orthodox, non-Orthodox argument, but I think that it's relevant in so many walks of our lives today. Routinely and consistently?
No, monitoring our motivation.
Monitoring our motivation. Those are the words I was looking for. Monitor your motivation and give energy routinely and consistently to those two sides. Okay, this is Rabbi Lichtenstein. I'm going to stop sharing. If anyone wants to make a comment about that, please do.
Yeah.
Yes, Tova.
It is very difficult to talk to a person who is not religious and he doesn't see any value in religion. So it's very difficult to have a common language because there's nothing you can talk about. You say, you can't mention that it's in the Torah because they don't care. You can't mention that, I know it's very difficult. I don't know, where do you start to talk to somebody who is not interested? First of all, he doesn't know the sources. He doesn't know the what you're talking about, and how do you make them listen or even think that it's valuable to them, that it's important?
I understand. I'd like to answer you without answering you. And what I mean is, to start discussing how are we going to discuss is too detailed and lengthy and maybe not the focus of what we're trying to do, but look for a way, absolutely. But I'd like to quote a different Gemara. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says, in Hebrew, always be modest and easygoing with people like Hillel and not strict like Shammai. The Gemara tells a story about 3 potential converts, each one with a different unacceptable idea of conversion, meaning you convert only for Torah shebichtav, the written Torah without the oral Torah.
Right.
I just want to have a quick conversion, instant conversion, or I want to be Kohen Gadol.
Right.
And Shammai pushes them away, and Hillel accepts them and teaches them and shows them that they cannot go through conversion just the way they want to, but they all accept in the end a full conversion. And then they get together and they all say the strictness of Shammai would have pushed us away, and the modesty, the softness of Hillel brought us under the wings of the divine the divine presence. There's a better word for it, the divine providence. And the Rav Kook, who is very much a Hillelnik and not a Shammainik in his own ways, could have said on that Gemara, you see, I'm right. But Rav Kook, like Rav Kook, said, I want to point out what's right about Hillel and what's right about Shammai. I love it. It's fascinating. And he says there's a point in Shammai, and there's something to say in favor of Hillel. There's something to say in favor of Hillel, because if you're very strict and you want to push the truth in people's faces, you're just going to turn them away, and it's not effective. But there's something to be said against what Hillel does, because it's kind of saying, we accept anything. You want to be a convert like this, you want to be a Jew like that, we accept everything. And that's not true. We don't accept everything. There's something to be said in favor of Shammai, that he's putting red lines in place. And if you cross the red line, what was the headline of Lichtenstein's article? Beyond the pill, right? If you cross a red line, it's not acceptable. We don't accept it. You have to draw red lines. But what Shammai is doing is dangerous, because people are going to be turned away. So Rav Lichtenstein says, so what is the answer? We need people like Shammai, and we need people like Hillel. But now we have a difficulty with what the Gemara is saying, because the Gemara said a person should always be like Hillel and not like Shammai. So Rav Kook says, and it's not face value, it's not the pshat of what the Gemara is saying. Rav Kook says most people should be like Hillel, because to be like Shammai and be able to draw red lines and tell people this is not acceptable and not create friction and animosity between people, whoa, that's very difficult. So if you feel you can't do that, so most people should be like Hillel, because the dangers of Shammai, of the way Shammai went, are so great with most people that it's going to cause a lot of damage. So everyone be like Hillel, and some people will be like Shammai. So for many years, I've thought, Rav Kook, okay, you wanted to say that. I love what you're saying. It's not what the Gemara is saying, but you wanted to find an excuse to see how to put it together with the Gemara. Okay. But now I think that Rav Kook was not just reconciling what he was saying with the Gemara, he was also making another point. The way of Shammai is dangerous. There are certain people who can do it and do it constructively. Most people don't do it. If you can't handle it, of arguing with someone and putting down red lines and saying this is not acceptable, and at the same time maintaining a relationship with that person, so walk away from it. Somebody else will have to do it, and you keep up the Hillel way. So if you can, I'm not saying don't, Tova, I'm not saying don't look for it. If you can find a way, a constructive way, and do it in a positive, effective way, great. And if you maintain proper, decent relationships with people, if that's the best that I can do as an individual, and at least I will not do anything that will be detrimental to as Rav Lichtenstein said, to Klal Yisrael. Mark.
Tova, I'm fascinated by your statement. And the reason I'm fascinated by it is because you and I, have been sharing these shiurim for many months. And I'm not as observant as you, I'm sure of it, and I'm not as religious as you. And yet I can hear what you say, and I think you've been hearing what I've been saying. So we do have a basis for discussion. We really do.
Because you are open-minded, you are willing to listen to me. There are
So
people that want.
All right. So that's the key. And of course,
The willingness.
we owe that to our rabbi, because he's the
So in other words, if he
prime
wasn't
example.
here, we wouldn't behave so well.
Well, perhaps. I don't know. I think I would probably fall into that trap far before you would. But I think what we're learning is that given the right environment and the right background, we can discuss and respect, even though we may not agree.
Okay. That sounds good.
In other words, we're learning a lot from Rabbi Tzvi.
So I would add, though, not to say that there's no truth to that, but I would add that sometimes you have to take a step back and ask what's the first step that you have to take. Okay, so you can't teach them Judaism. I'll tell you something I've been mentioning in the last month. I saw it on a post on Facebook. Someone was saying, before we start the heated arguments, in order to make them constructive discussions and arguments and not just heated things, people throwing things in the other person's face, the first step is look for the common ground. Define what we agree on. And then from there, we can go to the places we disagree and start taking them apart one by one. find the places, what do we agree on? Take that person who's not religious, doesn't care about Judaism and religion, and ask yourselves, okay, why are you here in Israel? Why do you care about the people of Israel? Not to argue about it. Let's look for what is it? Why are we both here? Why do we both care about this country and this state? What is it? Is it because of anti-Semitism? Is it because of Jewish history and culture? Whatever it is, let's find a common ground. From there, let's try and move forward. So it could be an interesting experiment.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you, Rav Lichtenstein, and thank you, Rav Eitan, for sending me this article. And now I will continue to read it, please God, and send it to others, anyone who asks me for it. And we hopefully will have more lessons to learn from that article. Okay. I'm going back to the conservative movement that we were discussing. Not disgusting. I said disgusting. That we were discussing. That was not a Freudian slip. That was a tongue slip.
What did you say?
It's being recorded.
Discussing.
Being recorded. Too late.
I said we were being discussed. I meant we were discussing.
Uh-huh.
In any case, we were discussing decisions of the conservative movement, and I'd like to mention a couple of others to be able to discuss them. What I have on my list here is that in 1952, the Vad Halacha allowed Kohanim to marry divorcees, which is an explicit, how do you say, prohibition in the Torah. The condition was that they, how do you say, they give up on their position of kihuna, and have also it says here they should have a small wedding. And in 1996, it says they put aside all these limitations and gave a general heter, okaying Kohanim to marry a Grusha. Actually, I have heard, don't have any verification of this. I don't know if it's a rumor. I don't know myself of any proper halachic basis for this in Orthodoxy. I've heard of people who say that if a Kohen makes a physical word blemish is not enough. Makes a physical, causes himself physical harm in a way that he is kind of
He's left the Kohen.
he's what?
He's left the Kohen.
Yeah, but I'm missing a word before I say that. He causes himself an impairment, something that causes him a certain level of disability.
Mhm.
Okay, if he has a certain Eliezer is joining us. Shalom, Eliezer. If he has, cuts off a certain part of his finger, I'm sorry, it's very difficult even to discuss, even to mention in here. But if he does that, then he's considered as what we call in Hebrew a Kohen Baal Mum, a Kohen with a disability or an imperfection, and in any case that he's pasul to be a Kohen, and then he's allowed to marry a woman who's a divorcee. And we're not getting into the question of why did the Torah put in place this prohibition, but right now I am not aware of. I have to be honest. I have not studied the discussion in the conservative Vad Halacha. What was the justification for this? Maybe because Kohanim are not working in the Mikdash today, but I'm not sure. I am not aware of in any way of a way, halachic way of justifying this. A Kohen is a Kohen. I know there are Kohanim who did this. I know a certain person personally who is a Kohen and married a divorcee, and it was discussed in Kinal David at one point. And what I said was to give him an Aliyah Torah, not that of a Kohen. Not give him an Aliyah as Kohen. You can have an Aliyah like I can have an Aliyah. I don't think what he's doing is justified. I think he's transgressing something of the Torah. But I do not think that we should only give an Aliyah to people who are perfect Jews who keep all of the mitzvot of the Torah. First of all, because then we can close shop because nobody is perfect. And second of all, because we're not judgmental in that way. So we want shul to be open for everyone, and that is included. So he can have an Aliyah, and he had an Aliyah, just not that of the Kohen. But that's different than saying that it's okay to do it. Meaning, after the fact, if he did it, then he's a Jew. It doesn't nullify his Judaism. It doesn't even nullify his state of being a Kohen, but it does mean that he's a Kohen who's not respecting his holiness of Kehuna. So we don't give him the rights of a Kohen. But if he does tshuva, it could be in other ways, and I'm not pushing him to divorce his wife, because that's another humanistic issue. But for instance, if a Kohen doesn't care about being what's the word for the opposite of purified?
Tameh, you mean impure?
Defiled by
Defiled.
a dead person, or the presence of a dead person, tumat met, then again we won't treat him as a Kohen. But if he does tshuva and he wants to return to being a Kohen, then he can do tshuva. But right now, so it doesn't nullify his state of kehuna, but I don't see place for allowing it or for making a psak halacha that it is permissible. So this is one of the places that I can point to where there's a difference in halacha between conservative and orthodoxy. In the same way, a Kohen is not allowed to marry a convert. And once again, we have all perfect love and admiration for converts. Next Shabbat, not this coming Shabbat in a week and a half, in Kinol David, we are part of an annual statewide Shabbat, because in the point of making the point of loving the converts and helping converts and so on. So we are not suspected to be against converts, but at the same time we accept the halacha that a Kohen cannot marry a convert. Those of us who remember the Brunels, Shlomo and Ruth, I can tell that one of their daughters was going out with someone, and he brought her home to meet his mother. I guess he liked her. And his mother took him aside and said, "What are you doing? You're a Kohen." And this young man did not know. He knew he was a Kohen. He didn't know that as a Kohen, he can't marry a convert. And they separated. Sadly, this young man and Shlomo and Ruth's daughter separated. I did not follow this young man, but Shlomo and Ruth's daughter is happily married with children. Thank God, not to him, to someone else. So we have our red lines. And the conservative movement sometimes crosses those red lines in ways that I am not aware of what is the justification for it. So here we are in an area where we have disagreement. I'm pointing out the points where we have clear halachic disagreements. Another halacha, and this is an interesting one in a different way. In the year 2000, according to my list over here, the Vad Halacha decided that a rabbi should not investigate, do I have the word right? Investigate questions of a person being a mamzer. Mamzer is a person who's born from a man and a woman who not only are not allowed to marry or have relations, but it's on the higher level of prohibitions, relations within the family, a married woman, so on, with another man. So a child who's born from this is a mamzer, a bastard, in the halachic term, not in the way of using it as a curse. Is not allowed to marry Jews, male or female. Very difficult state. We do not want to reach that situation. I have a friend who is an Orthodox rabbi and a lawyer. And one of the things that he's done, two things that he's done in life, is he fights for women who are in situations of they're not divorced and they can't marry anyone, aguna, and he finds a halachic way out for them. He found out about one woman, this is the situation. He gets the guy to whatever. He goes way beyond the call of duty to release women from that kind of situation, and also to release a person from being in the situation of a mamzer. One of the stories he told me, I've brought him sometimes to speak to groups and tell them he has these fascinating, wild stories about how he goes about reaching these solutions. They're all halachic solutions. At one time, there was a story about someone who was the Beit Din paskin that he is a mamzer, and this person went out and made such an investigation. It turned out that the first person that the mother had married was actually non-Jewish, and because he was not Jewish, so the first marriage
doesn't
was
matter.
not valid, and
valid.
so the relations with the second man were not making the son a mamzer. Whatever, he cleared him, and no one else cared about it. Everybody just accepted the details. He's a mamzer. What can you do? Let's go on with life. And he said, "No, I'm not going on with life. I'm going to fight for these people." That's the great thing that this person does, and so the halacha is that if you don't know that a person is a mamzer, the truth is that the biological facts are that he was married from a father whose relations with this woman were prohibited, and the higher level, they were close relatives, or she was married to another man, whatever. But if we don't know it,
Then it doesn't matter.
and we don't know that he's a mamzer, and it happened 10 generations ago, and since then, his family has continued in Am Yisrael, so he's not a mamzer. By the way, there are stories of Rav Ovadia Yosef, who sometimes I can criticize about other things, but with his tremendous halachic power and acceptance, he also did things like this, giving psak about a person who otherwise would have been a mamzer. Of Ben Ilau was for some years in a close relationship with him. He was writing a doctorate about him, and he told the story that he was waiting outside of his a private room where he accepted people privately, and he was waiting outside, and when people went out, Ovadia showed him his hands. His hands were wet, and he said, "You know why my hands are wet? Because of the tears of these people who were going to be mamzerim unless I found a solution," and I found a solution. So you can appreciate him for that. But what they decided in the conservative movement was, don't investigate. If we don't investigate, there aren't mamzerim.
You don't know.
This one I have to say, contrary to Kohanim marrying divorcees or converts, this one I can see that there's room for it. And there are actually today, there's a small group of Orthodox, mostly a certain Rabbanit, who's making this, struggling for Batei Din not to seek out mamzerim if we don't know that they're mamzerim, so that it will end, and for the next generations they won't be considered mamzerim, and so on. So I can see that there's room for this, even within Orthodoxy. So here is something that is not accepted in Orthodoxy, but I can say that I can actually see a place for this. So here is something that we may find common ground to be able to agree upon, or at least that it can be controversial, but it's not totally something that I have to totally reject. Here's an interesting one. In 2006, they accepted that in spite of the prohibition of same-sex sexual relations for men, nonetheless, a homosexual can be accepted for positions of leadership in Rabbanut. I would say this was in 2006. We are 18 years after that. Today, a small part of Orthodox Rabbanut is willing to accept this, willing to say that we accept that this is not a choice, that someone being homosexual or lesbian is not choice. It's a given fact, and not their choice. They're not choosing this to go against the Torah. And given that it's a fact, we cannot be judgmental of them. And even though we cannot, to date, give a halachic psak, therefore it's okay to transgress the prohibition in the Torah. At the same time, we can't be judgmental of the person, and we can not ask him private questions, just like we don't ask any other religious leader intimate questions about his relations with his wife when she is nida, and which is also a very strict prohibition of the Torah. So we don't have to ask him private, intimate questions. And if he wants to be a religious figure and to teach Torah, to be accepted in the community, but even to be a leader, so we would accept that. So that's also something that, in a gradual process, is acceptable to some groups of Orthodoxy today. In 2006, according to my knowledge, the decision caused some of the people from the conservative Vaad Halakha to leave because they weren't willing to accept that. Maybe now they would return if they could, I'm not sure. Okay, so these are some of the specific decisions that were accepted in different times. And what we see here is that there are certain things that I do see that Orthodoxy in some way may be able to accept, and some things that absolutely not. And the red lines are defined and put in place in different places. Yes, Idan.
It's important to know that that issue and a related issue, the issue of whether a rabbi can marry a gay couple, it caused tremendous tension and there was a lot of disagreement within the conservative movement. Tremendous disagreement within the conservative movement. It was not a black and white issue. I don't know how it resolved itself. I do know today that there are rabbis that will perform a wedding for a gay couple within the conservative movement, but I'm not certain that that's universal.
Mhm.
And there are issues that cause strife among clergy.
Yeah.
Within the conservative movement.
I would assume that today it's very acceptable because it's kind of a social, socially accepted thing that people that to the point where I think it's exaggerated in the sense that take the media, to be interviewed on the media and to respectfully express opposition to being religiously accepting of a same-sex marriage and things like that, the media will eat that person, a person who expresses such kind of objection, alive. And I think
both
that's
sides
wrong.
of the coin sometimes.
Regardless of what my opinion is,
Right.
you can argue with a person who says that. I'm not talking about a person who comes out in media and says they are, the word in Hebrew is sotim. They are what's the word in English for?
Perverts.
Sorry?
Perverts.
Perverts. People who yell and scream and they're perverts. And or I was interviewed on a certain radio station after a certain Orthodox rabbi was speaking powerfully in the public sphere about these are hem reshaim, these are evil people and they're this and that. And I was asked to be interviewed on a radio station about this, and I said, how can you just come out and say that you want to say something respectfully? Let's hear what you have to say. Just to yell, Resha, 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 he was yelling this out loud. And I said, if a student of his, if a disciple of his came up to him privately and told him, Rabbi, I'm facing a difficulty. I find that I have a homosexual, that's my sexual desire, that's my sexual inclination. Would the rabbi get up right there and yell at him, you are a Rasha, 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 or would he say, okay, let's go talk to it, let's see what we can do? Maybe I would disagree about what his solution would be, but he wouldn't stand up right there in the middle of the Beit Midrash and yell at this Talmid. So why? No, I'm sure he wouldn't. So why publicly is this acceptable? But so on the one hand, I will speak up against speaking up in a derogatory way like that, or calling people perverts. But on the other hand, if he tried to speak respectfully about why he objects to homosexuality, then the media would not allow him even to speak. So I think that's the other extreme that we should not accept. But I understand that it can create, like you say, Ilana, it can create disagreements within clergy. My guess is that it's been accepted in the conservative movement. It's in a process in the Orthodox rabbinics. Some who are absolutely against. I don't know if you saw the headlines. The rabbi of Yerushalayim, there was a funeral of one of the soldiers who fell in Gaza, and he was asked to eulogize, and also the Speaker of the Knesset, the Yoshev Rosh HaKnesset, Miki Ochana, I think it's Ochana, yeah.
Ochana.
Was asked to speak, and the rabbi said he will only speak if he speaks before Ochana, and he leaves after he speaks because he was not willing to be there when Ochana would speak, and he wasn't willing to shake his hand at the funeral, and the family accepted that. So the rabbi spoke first and then left. And I absolutely certainly would not do that. We had this in Ra'anana. We had this in Ra'anana, in Lechuni Ranina, and I'm not being critical of Lechuni Ranina or of Yuki, Meir was the rabbi of Lechuni Ranina. For many long-standing years, the mayor of Ra'anana on Yom Kippur night has been invited to Lechuni Ranina to open the Aron when you open the Aron after Shmoneh Esrei on Yom Kippur night. For many years, it was Bielski. When Bielski retired, before elections, the person who took his place was Eitan Ginsburg. Eitan Ginsburg is homosexual, married to a man, is now a Chaver Knesset. And there was an argument in the public, in the tzibur, in the congregation. How can we give on Yom Kippur a homosexual person the kibud of the honor of opening the Aron? And the Rav Yuki did not accept this and allowed it. And he said, why? Because I don't want to speak ill of the other mayor, but because the other one was a tzaddik, was keeping all of Ilchot Shabbat and Nida and everything else. So all those are acceptable, and this one is not acceptable. If a person who has more free choice, to keep Shabbat or whether or not you're going to be homosexual. So if you accept that the person who doesn't keep Shabbat and Nida and Kashrut is allowed to open we can respect him and honor him in opening the Aron on Yom Kippur night, so we can't honor the person who's homosexual. So, but just to say that these arguments can happen within Orthodoxy, and the Rabbanut of Orthodoxy is kind of beginning some people to understand that it's not a choice. Some people say it's not a choice, but I have no answers for you. You're gonna have to. You want to live celibate for life? That's the only option I can give you. And others are saying, no, we have to look for solutions. Or it's worse. If we don't find any solution, what happens is people are just gonna
Commit suicide sometimes.
Commit suicide sometimes, but they're not accepted by society. And they're certainly not, if religion doesn't accept them, they're certainly not going to be religious. So they will be homosexual.
Leave the congregation, basically.
But they won't keep Shabbat. So did you gain or lose? So I can see an argument here, but in any case, this was the conservative movement some years ago. I'd like to raise another issue, and that is intermarriage. I don't think that it is formally accepted as permissible. It is accepted socially. It's also accepted in shul, coming to shul. What I have here is it's not accepted formally to be members of the congregation, but factually it is. I have here a certain meaning that mixed couples, Jewish and non-Jewish, are accepted in the community. And at the end of the day, what really happens is that the non-Jewish partner is also accepted as a member in the community, which is causing the numbers of non-Jews within conservative communities to be growing, certainly in Reform communities. And once again, it's kind of a certain line where in Orthodoxy you have the same questions. For instance, if we mentioned driving on Shabbat, so we said in Orthodoxy you have the open parking lot or closed parking lot. But if someone drives to shul, we don't throw him out of shul. We will not give him, no Orthodox rabbi will give that person an explicit permission, heter, to drive to shul on Shabbat, but we'll turn a blind eye. Meaning we're not willing to say that halachically it's okay, but if you come, we don't want to push you away. And so in the same way here, a person can be married, and we had in Kinol David, we've had this, a person married, there was a couple many, many years ago who were married. She was Jewish, he was not. He was a wonderful, very person fighting all his life, busy with all kinds of struggles for justice and human rights and equality, a very moral person. not interested in being Jewish. I spoke to him about it. And their son had a bar mitzvah in Kinol David. Why not? He's Jewish. Because his father is not Jewish. So the son can't have a bar mitzvah. His father didn't have an aliyah, but we can have him in the building, in the room, and say, you're a nice person, we like you, but you're not Jewish. And years later, the son turned to us to have his Shabbat Chatan when he got married in Kinol David. That's the last we heard of him. He hasn't been in touch. I can't say, the continuation of the story should have been, and he became about tshuva, and the father converted. No, that didn't happen. But we were respectful of him, and he was respectful of us.
Nice.
And it can happen again in Kinol David. And we will not accept the non-Jewish person as a member. We will respect the person for whoever they are. And they can be in the shul, and the Brunels, who I mentioned before, and not only them, other people converted, since we love and appreciate and admire and support converts. We've had non-Jewish relatives of converts come to shul, which is fine. They can come to shul. They want to see their relative who converted to Judaism. They want to see what they're doing, see their community. They're welcome. And once I offered one of the kibbudim in shul, and the convert who knew that their relative was not Jewish said to me, no, he's not Jewish. He's here as a guest in the shul, but he's not expecting to be part of the ceremony or anything like that. And it's
Very
fine.
nice.
He's not insulted by it, so we can work things out. But the slippery slope seems to be, I would say, critically of conservative practicality, seems to be in action here. If you don't draw a line, then it seems to be kind of that people are not putting things, and you can say the same to me. Someone else more strict than me could say the same to me. When you accept that the Jewish woman with a non-Jewish husband, that she can be a member of the shul, somewhere down the road, you're going to be accepting the non-Jew to the community. Right now, I'm saying, no, I will not. But I can understand if someone would criticize me and say, you're creating the slippery slope. Right now, I think we're upholding the fortress and not allowing us to go down that lane. And at the same time, being respectful towards people. And I do think that the conservative movement has lost that red line, and it's lost, and it has an effect. The last thing I would say is there's a difference between the conservative platform, the conservative principles, and the practicality. There are conservative people who keep conservative halakha. There are conservative rabbis, rabbot, I don't know, Ilana, not rabbanit, right? Rabbah,
Correct.
who keep halakha that they believe in.
Yes.
There are conservative people who come to tefillah, who come for chagim, who have a meal on Sukkot in the sukkah, but there are very few. Not many people in the conservative communities are people who keep mitzvot and halakha. The numbers are very low. You're saying that I'm not being accurate?
I don't know if you want to really say what you just said, that last statement.
Why not?
Because you may be overstating something unless you got a recent survey that shows that. I'm not certain. I think there are plenty of my experience, let me put it that way, plenty of conservative Jews who do observe mitzvot, who do observe Shabbat, who
Lay
don't
people.
ride, huh?
Lay people.
Lay people who don't ride on Shabbat. I don't know what the numbers are. And so
Okay.
I would just be careful.
I accept, Ilana, I accept. One of the reasons, I don't know if you know this, but I paid someone to get you to come so that you can, so that we can clarify the facts. So I will say it more moderately. The distance between the rabbinic positions on the halakha and where the communities are at, there is quite a distance, and the numbers are not what the Orthodox rabbis are not happy with the numbers. people in the Orthodox communities keeping halakha, but there's a difference because, first of all, it's more accepted, and even when it's not performed, it's more of a thing. I understand that this is, I'm part of Orthodoxy. This is Orthodoxy. I'm not such a, I can't keep up with all the halachot. It's less of a belief of, I just don't want. I don't think it should be done. It's more, I'm not so makpid. I'm not so careful about it. And I would guess, again, I'm not saying knowledge, that some of the people in the conservative movement who come to the community, they do want the community, they want the communities to exist with Shabbat and Chagim, but they don't see it as something that is part of their personal religious life to keep these halach. And the distance between the communities and the formal halakha and the people in the communities, the lay people, is bigger, is greater than within Orthodoxy. And I will say it's a weakness, and it's also a weakness of Orthodoxy in some ways, on a different level. And I would even say, I'm going to say this is criticism of the Orthodox lay people. If you want rabbis to be able to make innovative piskei halacha, to be able to say, oh, this is a chidush, this is something we're going to accept, this is something we're going to make a new psak and things like that, it's easier for them to do it if they know that there's a congregation that's going to keep the rules that they put in place, than if, in any case, what they say is not always practiced. So the more that the community practices the psak of the rabbanim or rabbaniot, the more that we will be able to accept that there are some changes and put them in place, because we know that it's not going to get out of hand. It's not going to be a slippery slope. If rabbis' authority is accepted to draw the lines and not create slippery slopes, it's easier for rabbis to accept that they should move without sliding down somewhere they don't want to reach.
See, I guess let me just share this quick impression. When I moved back to the U.S. in '89, roughly, I had a job in Portland, Maine, as the director of Jewish education for Southern Maine. And among the many things that I was responsible for was running the Hebrew school that was shared by a small Orthodox and a small conservative synagogue. And they were a few blocks away, but the Hebrew school, the content, that was not a problem. But one thing they wanted was that I should be in shul on Shabbat morning.
Which shul?
So juggling back and forth, but the two shuls were near each other. But what was the problem? It really wasn't within walking distance for me. So I would park far away in those days. This was a long time ago, and walk. And what shocked me in my naivete, it was in how many of the people from the Orthodox shul I also saw parking. Never mind. And the point is that I was struck by that, because the Masorti movement at that time that I was involved with here in Israel, people were far more observant than I would have expected, and than you would expect now. Both of those things.
Yes.
I assume also it varies, like it does in Orthodoxy. It varies from community to community.
Oh, of course it does. It certainly does. But I assume that anybody who went to the Orthodox synagogue, it wouldn't be driving to synagogue. Whereas in the conservative movement, there was a heter, there was a permit to drive only to shul,
Sure.
so
Right,
that there
we
would be a
discussed that,
Shabbat
right.
community. And that, that occurred decades beforehand.
Right.
And so, but in the Masorti movement, no. They're
Okay.
different, but I was surprised to see an Orthodox shul with people
Yeah.
driving on Shabbat.
Okay. Eliezer,
I think that's a big difference.
please speak up, Eliezer.
think there's a big difference between Israel and Hutz on this issue. That in the Masorti movement in Israel. Now, I don't know. You have to define what you mean keeping the halachot. You mean keeping the conservative halachot or
Yeah.
keeping the Orthodox
No, the
halachot?
conservative.
But I think in Israel, a large number of Masorti people keep the conservative halachot. I'm not sure if it's a vast majority, but a significant percentage
Mhm.
do. From
I would also
my-
assume that the intermarriage in Israel is nowhere near the intermarriage in other countries,
That's true.
even in Reform communities, because Jews live with
Probably
Jews.
true. Yeah,
And I think
that's
the
probably true.
relation to homosexuality and single-sex marriages is very much up in the air
Hmm.
in the Masorti movement.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay,
Eh,
Okay,
okay.
And then for me personally, just to round this out, this was 89 in 1990 or 91, the Masorti movement. David Galinkin, Rabbi Galinkin from the Masorti movement, wrote the Masorti movement's driving tshuva, which said, move closer to shul.
right. We've discussed that one in the previous.
In the past. But for me, it was what changed my behavior completely within the US, within the conservative movement in the US. I chose to abide by Galinkin's tshuva, even though the introduction says this does not in any way intend to govern what goes on in the conservative movement in the US. It was,
Okay.
but for me personally, it was.
Thank you. Okay, Mark, last comment for tonight.
Yeah, your discussion about not investigating, not
Investigating about a mamzer.
yeah. That reminds me of the very simple words that were popularized, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago. It was don't ask, don't tell. That was the policy. So, if you don't ask.
What are you're speaking about
No.
something specific historical?
Yeah,
Traveling to shul.
it was discussion about the army, about homosexuality in the army.
Uh-huh.
And it was Bill Clinton's policy. He had a way of simplifying things to very simple and very direct terminology. And he says, look, if you don't investigate, if you don't ask, and they don't tell, then everybody can live with things. It's okay.
Specifically about that issue, the long run, I don't think it's going to work because it's going to come out and then people are upset to know that there was someone there with me, not because they're upset about him. I'll give you an example: dormitories. Okay, and I don't think it's a black and white thing, but I don't think it's a black and white thing in either direction. Do you want to dorm in a men's dormitory with someone, and then discover that your roommate or roommates are homosexual?
So I have a confession to make. Don't take it personally, okay? But my confession is like this. Many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I would be traveling in Europe and I would go, I'd be going to a conference or something and I would get a per diem and it was like $100 per day. And so I could, take a hotel for $60 and take a meal for $10 and still have some cash in my pocket. But Mark being Mark, would not, a hotel at $60 is not my style. And I would go to a hostel, okay? So a hostel, I spent $20 and that's okay. So I'm in this hostel dormitory, a lot of bunk beds and so on. And I think this is in Vienna, one of my conferences there. And there's a guy there with his girlfriend and, they're schmoozing, whatever. And I figure, okay, she's going to, visiting with him and she's going to disappear soon. Yeah, but then she starts undressing completely. And, but this was natural. This was, for her, it was,
Okay,
it took me by surprise.
but it's not for them. They're comfortable with it, but you're not. So there is something to.
I've become comfortable. That's what I said. I have a confession. No, so yeah, of course, there's all kinds of aspects that go on with it, but it was an attempt to work around a very difficult conflict, dilemma, if you wish, and that was the solution. It worked for a period of time, but it was not permanent.
Right. Okay. Beseder, to be continued, but not in the next couple of weeks because we have next week Yom Yerushalayim, in 2 weeks Shavuot, in 3 weeks Hebrew. So our next meeting will be in 4 weeks from now, please God.
Oh, my
Thank you very
goodness.
much. Good night. Thanks.
Hang in there.
Thank
Learn
you.
Torah on Shavuot.
Thank you.
Bye.
And yes,
Bye.
and Chag Sameach to everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Laila
Kol
tov.
hakavod. Yesher koach.